everybody is always chasing something pleasurable, especially in sales. Like the world of sales is all about making money, making a lot of money, making that money fast, getting money from people, talking people into giving you money. That feels really superficial when you frame it that way. When you live a superficial life, you end up feeling isolated and lonely. But if you can reframe it, if you can shift that mindset to give me more, to what can I do for you, your existence will be more purposeful.
Today we have Sarah Brazier on, who is a friend. She's also a salesperson and account executive at Gong. We are going to be talking about homeschooling. We're going to be talking about community and how Sarah had a massive family and the impact that had on her and how she still craves that community. So really looking forward to today's show. So Sarah, that big question, always the most difficult question to kick it off. What is Sarah Brazier's Cosmic Bridge?
It is a difficult question, Mikey. You're kind of asking me to boil down, an existence. So when you first said it and you were explaining to me other people's answers, I was thinking like thematically what draws me to certain jobs, or thematically what do I pursue in my day-to-day or in my existence. And I think deep relationships and community, and those are things that I'm pursuing, and I'm pursuing aspects of those that I think, are fascinating to me. How we communicate, how we help others. So I think that's a piece of it. And then I don't know if I do a great job of bridging this gap and how I live my day to day, but I always feel like the pursuit of excellence, the pursuit of success, those things that make you feel good and warm and fuzzy inside usually don't have anything to do with you as an individual, or if I'll speak in the me terms, like I don't think it really has to do with me so much as the opportunity to lift other people up through doing good work and doing work well done. And I think those are the things that I enjoy and kind of bridge the gap for me, because like I work in sales, like you said, and most of what we can do, you can either do in a sort of robotic, inhuman, unintentional way, and it can be a grind, or you can find meaning and purpose in like these really simple day-to-day things that you do, and you can elevate it. And for me, it's elevating it through relationship and community. And I don't know, is it self-sacrifice? Is it giving? I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Those don't feel quite right, but they're like kind of getting close to it.
Serving, yeah.
That could be it. That could be my word. I recently woke up and I'm drinking coffee for everybody who's like, you idiot.
Sarah's very genuine, and she's already admitting her vulnerabilities today, that she's just woken up. But one of the things you mentioned was, well, maybe it's related. I'm going to get your perspective on this, but maybe serving is related with the deep relationships. And the question I was going to ask is, what separates a deep relationship from a shallow relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think shallow relationships are transactional. They don't last. They're the person that you hung out with in college because you guys were drinking buddies, and then college ended and you got a job and you haven't heard from them since. Those are shallow relationships, and everybody has them. I have plenty of shallow relationships. I think some of the relationships I have with people I sell to and have sold to end up being shallow relationships. But then I also have found that some of those people I'm friends with, and I really like them, and I'm like excited to get on calls with them. And those are, I don't know if they're fully deep. We're like swimming in the deep end and there's sharks and stuff yet, but we're getting closer to there. And then I have a very big family. There's 7 kids in my family, and we all lived really close to each other when I was in high school. My oldest brother got married when I was like in middle school and had kids. So there's always like people over, little kids around for, those kind of like foundational years of figuring out who you are. So for me, that was like high school, college. And I always really, really liked that and really appreciated that. And my family was also, religious. We went to church every Sunday. So we had sort of this tradition of going to church in the morning, my dad yelling at everyone to like get up, we got like 2 showers and 9 people. So gotta go fast. And getting people to church in the morning. And so there's always like this big, like kind of bustling hubbub. And then getting to church and always walking in like 5 minutes late when the opening hymn is like coming to a close. And then afterward being together as a family and just talking about whether it was something that happened in a sermon or something that's going on in somebody's lives, but really sitting down and just like being with each other and being present. And like I really like that. I like that. I miss that now that I live so far away from most of my family. I miss, having a Sunday where you don't ever once look at your phone. So
That's awesome. And I love hearing about those family moments. So, just having those family moments where you're together, right? One in the church, and then afterwards actually analyzing what was said, which I think is amazing in the sermon. How's that affected you today, like the Sarah Brazier of today? Because obviously you mentioned you've got fond memories, but how do you think that influenced the person you are today?
I think it's because I'm at my mom's house right now, so I get to go be like, what are all the things that happened to me as a child? But we were homeschooled, so that's what happened to me as a child. It's been so weird. We were homeschooled up until I was homeschooled up until fifth grade. Some of us stayed in longer. Some of us went in earlier. My mom got a little burnt out and said, "I'm done with you children. I'm going to go finish my college degree." So she did, and she got a master's degree. But that homeschooling really fosters like a sense of independent thinking and pursuing things that you find interesting. And you have the ability to go to take a subject and go really deep and ask yourself why a lot in a way that at least the American school system doesn't really support. Um, and so, like if I'm going to go do something, if I'm going to go try to be good at something, which when I do things, I like to try to be good at them. Um, then you end up wanting to be curious and ask yourself why is that happening and how is this functioning. And so as an SDR, when I first went into the sales world, I had a lot of big why questions and no one could ever answer them. My first job, and it was really, really frustrating because those why questions, if I knew the answer, I would be successful. I just knew it. But because of the way that the sales organization was structured and making hires for people that too early, just you couldn't get to the answers. And so I went to a different company and I started asking why more and really digging into the answers I was giving and then asking why on top of that. And it made everything so much more fruitful in terms of my performance. And I found that the people that I needed to ask why to the most were my customers, and the people that I was trying to get meetings with and trying to help. And through asking why to them, I ended up, being able to come up with creative solutions, which were in service of them. And so it's sort of like that, kind of like the cerebral practice of going in on a subject and going deep. I think that was like really kind of just who we are as a family, and very much applied to how I worked. And then obviously, going to church, that's like that's the whole long and short of the story of being a Christian is service and constantly striving to be in service of others, failing and knowing that, God, Jesus is the only one who can truly fulfill that need. But we don't really have to go deep into religion.
Well, maybe we will. Nothing is off guards on this podcast. Maybe we will go down that road in a second. But before we did that, a topic which is interesting to me, and I'm sure will be interesting to others, is homeschooling, because I don't know that many people that were homeschooled. So obviously, you know this in your head, but I don't, and I'm sure other people won't, is the why. You mentioned you're more curious and you're looking more into the why of things. Why am I doing this job? Why do my customers care? Why? Simon Sinek obviously talks about that a lot. But why, I'm asking a why question now as well. Why does homeschooling help you think more about the why of things?
I think homeschooling, number one, gets a bad rap from a lot of people because you think of like someone who's being homeschooled because their parents are like very conservative and religious and want you to wear a jean skirt, which that was not my parents. I did not wear a jean skirt. Although I do own a jean skirt. I don't wear it very often, but it's like a mini skirt, so it's different. My parents felt that the public school system didn't do a good job of like fostering independent thinking and true like exploration of knowledge, um, or really created that in kids. Which I think, if you look at the American school system, a lot of people would agree. There's a guy named Mike Yates, and he posts a lot on LinkedIn. I'm friends with him from college. We did speech and debate together, but he posts a lot about how the American school system is broken, and he's basically dedicated his life to coming up with new ways to teach and help kids learn. And at this point, he's gotten so frustrated with the system that he's pulled his kids out of school and he's homeschooling. And when you homeschool, that means that you don't have to follow any specific kind of curriculum, which might make some people like clutch their pearls. But instead, you have a lot of freedom. So some of that freedom as a kid, when I was being homeschooled, was just like being able to go outside and play. And if you do any research on like child psychology, free play, that means like unsupervised, unparented play, where you can just go do things that might be a tiny bit dangerous, like climb a tree to the very, very tippy top. And no one's, no grown-ups watching. That's really, really good for you, actually. And it makes you a very independent thinker, because you end up putting yourselves in situations that are dangerous that you then have to problem solve your way out of. So that was like an aspect of homeschooling, was literally just going outside and playing way more than anybody else who was going to elementary school. The other thing is that like, my mom had, I would do math, I would do my reading, I would do, my science, but a lot of that stuff was always integrated with each other. So math less so, but like you could take history, English, and science. My mom would do things like have us read a book. I remember we read a book called Men of the Mississippi, which is about a turtle, and the turtles like live for like over 100 years, and so it documents the journey of the turtle, and the turtle goes through all of these important American history events, just hanging out in the Mississippi River. We also learned a whole bunch about like amphibians and lizards, and what do turtles do, and how do they function, and they go bury themselves in the sand or in the mud, and when it's cold, and they drop their heart rate down to like 1 beat per minute, crazy stuff like that. That's so fascinating. And so you get to start learning about how do turtles work, how does this, and you're also learning about geography, because we're documenting the whole journey, and what is the landscape of the Mississippi River, and we're just going really deep on this book, this story, and that allows us to explore so many different things, and see how science and history and math and English and reading and art, because we would start drawing our interpretations of what were happening in the book. We're all very interconnected with each other, and in the American school system, you go to one class, and then you go to the other class, and then you go to the next class, and they're all 45 minutes long, and the teachers don't talk to each other, and nothing lines up. So you don't really get that sense of like why things are connected. You're sort of going through the rote motions of how do I get my busy work done, and how do I do this thing. So when you have that existence of really exploring like a topic and going deep and wide at the same time, there's lots of why questions that you can ask yourself, and there's and then you do that, and you're not bound to the teacher explaining it 15 times to make sure every student heard, because they're all talking to each other, or making you do busy work because they didn't really have much of a lesson planned that day. You can just do it and then go adventure. So yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great. I was like, more is Ingle Wilder.
So I guess you were going like deeper into every topic that was brought up, right, at home when you were homeschooling. You were going deeper than you think you would if you were like in the American school system.
Yeah, you have like the freedom to be like, well, why is that? And you're not beholden to making sure that you're hitting the milestone or the marker of whatever the curriculum plan is. And don't worry, my mom still had to like submit things to make sure that like the state of Ohio would like be like, yes, Sarah is learning. There was things she had to check the box for.
So it's an interesting. I didn't expect the conversation to go in this direction, but it's an interesting topic, because I was speaking with my colleague Charlie the other day about homeschooling. Don't want to get into the topic of the American school system and the British school system and that stuff. Anyway, we were talking about similar things to what you mentioned earlier, like is is the British school system the best place for kids, right? And maybe would you homeschool kids? He's already got a 2-year-old. I'm, in the future, I'm sure it's something that's going to happen to me. So we were having the conversation, but one of the things I thought about was, even if the subjects that you're learning at home potentially are giving you like a deeper intelligence in a way, whether that's academic or, as you said, you're learning the why. One of the objections I came up with, and being devil's advocate to get your perspective as someone who went through this, is I guess you don't get exposure to community. And you mentioned community is important to you at the start, in that obviously when you go to a school, you're surrounded by other kids who may do bad things to you, may do good things to you, but it's kind of like a way of almost growing up in a way. And I know you mentioned you can play more, like from a psychological perspective, and I've seen those studies about free play is very helpful. But what about the community that you get from being in some type of public school? Do you feel like you missed out on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like your parents lock you in a closet when the other kids come out. So, number one, there are lots of kids in my neighborhood. So school ends, I still get to play with them. Number two, there's homeschooling communities. So in my neighborhood, there was a family that lived a block away. There's a family that lived like 3 blocks away. There's another, there were people all over. So it was actually even more fun because one of our friends, they owned a horse farm. So, a couple times, maybe once a week, maybe more, depending. I would spend the night at my friends' houses all the time. But I'd go over and I learned how to horseback ride for free because they had horses. And we would just be bored and be like, all right, well, let's ride the ponies. Great, done. So, there's lots of people that I was playing with and having fun with in my neighborhood, that were in close proximity. I also did a ton of extracurriculars. So, when I was homeschooled, before I went into public school in 5th grade. So before 5th grade, I played soccer, softball, basketball, swim team. It's a ballet. I was part of the or not part of the speech and debate team. I did that in college. I was part of 4-H, which 4-H is something that people do in rural communities where you raise cows or sew dresses or make crafts, and you take them to the county fair and they get judged. And I made apple cobbler, and I got first place at the county fair for my apple cobbler. And then I went to the state fair. I got second place for safe use of guns. Those are the things that you get to do. So I know how to handle a firearm. So I did those things. I was in community plays. I did a ton of different plays. We're part of a church group, so I did plays and sang in the choir. There were women who taught different languages. So I took Spanish and German and don't remember any of it. But we also took art classes. There were places that offered specific art classes for homeschool people. So you could come in the middle of the day. So I had private art classes. So we weren't without community, and then our homeschool group would do really cool things with reading Men of the Mississippi. My mom had a girls book club, and so there would be 15 different girls that would come over to our house every 2 weeks, and we would do a lot of activities together around that book. And then when we were doing that, we then would do nature tours, and we would go meet with park rangers, and they would take us. So how you do that maybe once in school, oh wow, we're going on a field trip. We did a field trip every month, and we would one year we regularly met with a park ranger for 3 or 4 months in a row, and we were and they would take us on these private tours and talk to us and do learning, and we'd collect the pond scum, and they'd take us to the lab and we'd look at the pond scum under the microscope. So you're not without community, and you actually have you're not stuck in the same building every single day. Yeah, the doors are open. You can run wild and be free. So no, I had lots of friends.
No, that's good to hear. I think that was a good response to my objection there.
I hear literally every time I talk to people, that's the biggest thing they have about homeschooling is well, did you have friends? Did you, what happens? No, I had tons of friends.
Yeah, they'll think the same thing, and then you'll answer it for them. So it'll address their objection. I wanted to go to a LinkedIn post you wrote recently. It's quite a long one, so I'm not going to read out the whole thing. But it's actually the reason I reached out to you to be on here, because if you follow Sarah's content, a lot of it is sales tips, which are great if anyone here is into sales. But this one was totally out of the blue, and I wasn't expecting it, but I thought it was very profound. So I'm just going to read a couple of snippets from it. It said, "Living, whether or not we do it well and with grace, is no easy feat. There is loneliness, suffering, and isolation." And then skipping on to that's kind of starting with the suffering side of life, but then she moves on to the kindness. She says, "There are moments, though, of kindness. The shopkeeper who gives the children candy, pretending it costs less than it actually does because the father misreads the sign and the children are starving." So I loved reading this post. I think there's a lot of nonsense on social media nowadays, so this was a really nice thing to read. And the question I had for you is, like, what inspired this post? Where did it come from? Because it was very different to your usual content.
Yeah. So I wrote that post shortly after my cousin passed away, which was just a couple weeks ago, and he battled addiction and he lost that battle. And it I was just thinking about, like, when you are in that situation of suffering and suffering with yourself, um, it is a really isolating situation to be in, and kind of grappling with that. And you know, I've spent time on the internet like any other person does, and I look at things that people write and people do, and it's just a really mean place. And it's just getting meaner, and we spend more time on it, and it just feels like it can feel really superficial, and it just feels really mean. And so I'd sort of like, I had been thinking about that isolation and suffering, and then I think I read something, someone being mean, just being a jerk for no reason, and I was just kind of put out, and I just thought, man, like, um, life is so hard. Why put put that anger out into the world when you can observe it within yourself? Ask yourself some why questions. Why am I angry? Why do I feel this way? Why am I frustrated? And a lot of times, um, you come to some answers and conclusions, and most of the solutions fall within community. And the way you build community is through service, and service is an act of kindness. Um, and so that's kind of what I was thinking about. I was just thinking about just how hard life is, and how unfair life is. um, and I think, like, everybody is always chasing something pleasurable, like, especially in sales. Like, the world of sales is all about making money. That's like the idea behind it. It's like making money, making a lot of money, making that money fast, getting money from people, talking people into giving you money. That feels really superficial when you frame it that way. And when you live a superficial life, you end up feeling isolated and lonely. And it can also be like a different kind of addiction than what my cousin struggled with. Um, but if you can reframe it, if you can shift that mindset to give me more, to what can I do for you, um, I just feel like your existence will be more purposeful. I could like keep talking on and on about this. I feel like I should shut up.
Love it, Sarah. Yeah, no, I think that, as I said, the post is the reason we're here today having this conversation. So I wanted to actually go into another part, which I really liked on your side, which is, there are moments like these daily when, caught up in my own self-interest, I fail to maintain the perspective of the burden we all carry. So what I liked about this is, just giving my personal perspective here, obviously we live in this quite toxic area on social media of like cancel culture, people always trying to be out to get other people, almost like bullying online. And Carl Jung, the psychologist, is this concept of like the shadow, which is essentially we all have inner evil inside of us, and we need to recognize where are we at fault a lot of the times, and that comes into accountability. And what I liked here is you saying, I failed to maintain the perspective of the burden we all carry. That was, I thought, like a really profound thing that you did, and admitting that what I would call, or Carl Jung would call, the shadow there. So how do you, as Sarah Brazier, hold yourself accountable on a daily basis?
I don't know if I hold myself accountable on a daily basis. That's sort of the point. um, so, like, I'll explain it through like the lens of like religion, and through Christianity, because I think that's like the most familiar I am. But there's that concept of original sin, um, and that might have some people like having like big, like I don't want to talk about that, but that that idea is just is that sentence that you read, that we all strive and we all fail, and sometimes we're feeling even without realizing it. Um, like holding a door open for someone, or asking somebody how they are. We do things like objectify or quantify or turn a person into a number or a thing, instead of a soul within a body that has needs and wants and desires, and that we can either live in community with or not. And the book that I mentioned, Grapes of Wrath in there, which Grapes of Wrath is really a lot of that book is about that about the human spirit and how we are all connected through the human spirit. Um, I can't think of the name of the author of Grapes of Wrath. That makes me really dumb. But he,
I've got your post up here, so it's John Steinbeck. It says.
it's Steinbeck. Yeah. Steinbeck wrote about that a lot, and he was really into that. And I don't think that Steinbeck was particularly religious, but he was very, very spiritual. Um, yeah, and so yeah. I mean, Grapes of Wrath. Go read it if you haven't. It's really long, but it's really good. It's very much about human suffering, and like our failure. So how do I hold myself accountable? I mean, I just try. um, but I think like a moment like what I just experienced with my cousin passing suddenly was really grounding for me, and I'm still going through the process of being grounded by it, um, because I think that kind of over the past couple of years, I've just been working so hard at being good at my job, and good at my job in a superficial way, like making President's Club or being a top performer or consistently overachieving. Um, that I haven't spent as much time um, thinking about the people that I'm with, or how I'm with them, or even like who I want to be when I execute my job and just like the simple daily tasks. And so that's sort of like what I'm reflecting on lately. And I think most people experience that when they experience like death of a loved one, is you kind of go like, well, what is this all for anyway? And that's kind of what I'm coming to. And I don't know if I have any like checks and balances totally set up in my day to day, but um, I just went to the Sales Success Summit that Scott Ingram hosts, and he basically takes like top performers, like top 1% of salespeople at their company who've consistently done that, not just like 1 or 2 years in a row, but like multiple years in a row, and he asks them to speak about what they do. And every single one of them, um, thematically had some kind of higher purpose, some kind of reason for why they do what they do. Um, one of them being a guy named Luke Floyd, and I really liked his talk because he was really passionate about just like ending the day saying that he had a job well done, and performing at a level that he was like proud of, and that it has nothing to do with his quota attainment, and has everything to do with how he relates to, helps, and is in service of his customers. Um, so I've just kind of been like thinking about that. So every morning he has a mantra that he writes down about like who he wants to be. That's sort of how he frames his mind and focuses himself. And I used to do that. I used to do that a couple of years ago, and I kind of lost track of it. But those are things that I'm revisiting. It's just sort of like, who do I want to be today, and how do I take what I want and how I view myself and align my actions to that ideal.
Maybe too early to ask this question, but after what's happened, obviously you said you're revisiting these mantras. You're going to write them in the morning. Have you thought about what some of those mantras would be?
I think like one of my mantras is just like, end the day with a job well done. And like that's a piece of it. I have like practical ones, which are just like, what are the things that I need to do that actually like get my job done. like revenue generating activities. It's like, let's start there. Who are the people that I need to help, and how do I do that? How do I do that creatively and intelligently? How do I feel like I've done a job well done? And usually, like when I used to write mantras, I usually started with just like who I was in relationship with, not like, who's my like boyfriend or my husband or my partner, but just like who is it that I want to be a good person to. And that's usually how I started. So I'd have like an I goal, an individual goal, like who is Sarah today, a role goal, what are the revenue generating activities I want to do, and then like how am I tracking toward that. So a lot of the time when I first started was just like, be nice to Lucas. Lucas is my husband. He's my boyfriend at the time. It's like, how can I make sure that I'm being kind to him, despite like, if I'm frustrated, because you're usually meanest to the people that you love the most, right? You can take out your feelings on them, um, and I definitely have like a bit of a temper. So I'm not like mean and yelling at him, but I can I can be a jerk. That's it. I can be a jerk. So how can I not be a jerk today?
On that topic and related to your career as well. So you said you've like had a lot of what you called superficial success, which is you're getting to President's Club, you're a top performer, you get invited to these summits, you speak on all these podcasts. Obviously, you've been working really hard, right? And often that comes at a sacrifice. And I've seen it with other entrepreneurs or salespeople. That can often be like relationships and the home life. So, how do you find a good balance with Lucas, as you mentioned, and your life outside of work, and then your job and being a top performer?
We travel a lot together, and we do a lot of stuff together. We're getting into a pretty good balance. Um, part of that balance is like we didn't have to really think about it too much during COVID because we just spent 2 years sitting next to each other trying to do our jobs. We're constantly with each other. Um, but just because you're with someone doesn't mean that like you're in communion with them or in relationship with them.
Or present. Sometimes we're not present with our partners.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I've just started doing things, just like micro things differently. Like, um, I don't have any social media apps except for LinkedIn on my phone. I've like blocked Instagram and Facebook because just not having the app wasn't enough for me. I still would like log in on my browser. So just like I can't get in them. Great, done. Um, that frees up a ton of time to be in relationship with someone if you're not scrolling. Um, so like doing that. Another thing that I do is I've started just like not having my phone in my room at night. So like when it's time to go to bed, that phone stays in the living room, and then I can actually like have a conversation, or if I'm reading something, I can share what I'm reading with Lucas. Um, I've pretty much totally cut out alcohol, not because I had a problem with alcohol. Um, Someone that I'm close with just got out of rehab, and um, that experience of them going to rehab and then getting out kind of started making me think, about just the dependency of alcohol to relieve stress or go out and have a good time. You've talked about this a lot on your social media posts, and so I was kind of reflecting on that, and I was also thinking about, I listened to Andrew Huberman's podcast on the effects of alcohol on like your body and mind. And I was like, man, alcohol is way worse for you than I realized. Like I always knew it was bad, but I thought it wasn't that bad. So those two things I've been like for the past 2 months I've just pretty much cut out alcohol. Like I've had like 2 drinks. So doing stuff like that again opens up. When you do drugs, because alcohol's a drug, like it immediately takes you outside of being with other people, and it puts you into your own body and your own experience and how you're feeling. So again, you can be more present. So those are like things that we're doing. I cook dinner for Lucas. He says I don't cook it as much as I do. But I definitely cook. I cook dinner for Lucas and we eat dinner together. And we have a dog. And a lot of times in the evening, we take the dog together for a walk in the park. So we'll go and we'll let the dog off leash and then we'll walk through the park and just play fetch with him, which is great. So we have like these evening rituals of like being together and not thinking about work or being on our phones. And for me, I also have a rule, like at the end of the day, and I've had this rule for a really long time, but like 5 o'clock comes around and I'm not done with whatever I'm working on, it doesn't matter because I'm going to shut my laptop. And once the laptop's shut, then I'm done. And I also have it where it's like, if I can't get any work done, if I'm too distracted, I'm just going to shut the laptop and just go outside. Those things I do. And I think if you like take care of your body and your mind and you like eliminate distractions, say no to things and get a workout in, it's a lot easier to be kind to people because you aren't caught up in your own misery, your own self-induced misery. It's way easier to be nice when you don't have a hangover.
Yeah, no, it's not something when people, recommend cutting back on alcohol, it's not something they often say that, you can have better relationships, be more present, right? And it's such a good point that you mentioned. I just wanted to ask you one last question, Sarah. So you mentioned at the start with your Cosmic Bridge community was a big part of that and serving. So again, going to the why, you always ask about the why. Why is community so important to you?
Well, I think that's why I started off talking about my family, because like when you come from a family that's that big, like you have your own little tribe. And I think probably there's like so many dopamine rushes that were just really like strong in my childhood that I associate with that. And like, again, if you go back to like Christianity, I think a big piece of Christianity is about like community and communion, which is why I like the service of communion. If you're not familiar, it's basically like it's when you eat the bread and drink the wine, and depending on if you're Catholic or not, maybe it's Jesus's body and blood. I kind of theologically, I feel like doesn't matter. And the act is something that I think is really fascinating because it connects you with the community of the other Christians who are taking it with you because you're all doing it together. It also is something that literally every Christian has done since the beginning of the religion. So it's like 2,000 years old. And anyone who participates will do it in the future. And so in that act, there's a spiritual act happening. It's for the forgiveness of sins, right? It's a moment to say, like, even though you're struggling and you're trying to be nice and you're trying to be a good person, like you're still enough. Like God loves you regardless. That's what's happening there. And so you get to be in like this moment of ultimate, like, like you're loved no matter what, no matter how shitty of a human you are, or if you're Mother Teresa, you're still loved. You're on equal footing. And you get to have that with just like this massive community all at once. Sort of is like, to me, it's like the time continuum just shifts and you're all in this like ever present moment. And like that concept, just like that idea is really fascinating and beautiful to me. And I don't know. I'm just attracted to it. Mike.
It's not a bad thing to be attracted to. You could be attracted to a lot worse things. Sarah, firstly, I recommend following Sarah on LinkedIn. As she said, she's not on other social media nowadays, but if anyone wants to contact you, do you recommend they connect with you on LinkedIn, or do you recommend they contact you somewhere else?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the place. I had a dream last night that I started using Twitter. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe not.
Well, thanks a lot for your time, Sarah. I feel like I know another side of you after today, on top of your, B2B sales personality as well. So yeah, thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Fascinating show today with Sarah. I know very few people who've been homeschooled, so it was interesting to hear about that journey and how Sarah looks at that period of her life very positively, about the importance of family from a young age and how that's given her values going forward, and of course serving others and how that's Sarah's cosmic bridge and higher purpose. Please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast channel and YouTube, and we'll see you on next week's show.